In the softly lit quiet of a neonatal intensive care unit, machines beep rhythmically, tracking the fragile lives of premature infants. Tubes, monitors, and medical interventions fight to sustain what nature wasn't ready to complete. But among the wires and antiseptic air, something astonishing happens. A nurse leans over an incubator and gently lays a fingertip against a baby's paper-thin skin. The infant's heart rate stabilizes, breathing evens out, oxygen saturation rises. Over time, the babies who receive this kind of gentle, regular touch gain weight faster, suffer fewer complications, and most remarkably survive at significantly higher rates than those who don't. No medication, no surgery, just a human hand. How can this be? In a world driven by data, where algorithms determine what we see, where we go, and even who we love, this quiet miracle seems almost subversive. A single touch, administered with care and intention, can have more physiological impact than any drug in the NICU. The nurse's fingertip becomes an instrument, more powerful than machines, not because of what it does to the skin, but because of what it awakens in the brain. This is the mystery that lies at the heart of our story. How can a raw physical sensation, something as simple as pressure on the skin, be translated into emotional safety, connection, even love? It's a paradox. Never in human history have we been more digitally connected, and yet loneliness, anxiety, and social distrust are climbing. Our networks grow, but our bonds fray. Could something as ancient and primal as physical touch be the missing piece? Could the erosion of this sensory link, once vital to our evolution, be quietly starving our emotional lives? Touch, as we'll discover, is not just sensation. It is communication, memory, biology, and perhaps the first language our species ever knew. The touch code beneath the surface of our skin lies a vast, living network, an interface between body and world so intricate, so intelligent, it's easy to mistake it for something passive. But skin is anything but passive. It is our largest and most socially expressive organ, a textured map of nerves and cells stretching across nearly 2 square meters. Packed within it are more than 5 million sensory receptors, constantly translating the world into electrical signals the brain can interpret. Among these, one set stands apart: the C-tactile afferent nerves. Discovered relatively recently. These specialized fibers are tuned not for sharpness or speed, but for slowness, for gentle, caressing touch. They respond most strongly to the kinds of contact we associate with care and closeness: a hand stroking a forearm, a mother cradling a child, a friend's reassuring pat on the back. Unlike other touch receptors, C-tactile fibers don't simply report physical contact, they encode emotion. When activated, they stimulate areas of the brain linked to social bonding and pleasure, releasing neurochemicals like oxytocin and endorphins. In evolutionary terms, they are not designed to help us detect threats, but to help us feel safe. This neural signature of safety has deep roots. Long before humans spoke, long before language or law, our mammalian ancestors groomed each other to build alliances and reduce conflict. A chimpanzee's fingers delicately combing through another's fur is not hygiene, it's diplomacy. After confrontations, primates often reconciled through touch, soothing tension with tactile rituals that predate morality itself. To touch is to forgive, to belong, to remember who we are to one another. And this code of touch transcends species and cultures. In some societies, a handshake affirms trust. In others, a bow expresses mutual respect. Hugs seal greetings or farewells. Cheek kisses punctuate familiarity, and shared saunas or baths reinforce community. Across the globe, the ritual of touch functions as a social syntax, its grammar varying, but its emotional meaning universal. Modern medicine, too, has begun to rediscover what ancient instincts always knew. Patients who receive compassionate touch from caregivers not only report lower levels of pain and stress, but often show faster recovery times and deeper trust in their treatment. Touch reassures in a way no words can, engaging the limbic system, quieting the amygdala, reinforcing the feeling that we are not alone in our suffering. Yet in the push toward efficiency, convenience, and now contagion avoidance, touch is vanishing. The pandemic accelerated what had already begun: a subtle retreat from physical connection, remote work, contactless deliveries, digital communication, protective distancing. We adapted to stay safe, but at what neural cost? Emerging studies show that chronic touch deprivation is linked to higher anxiety, increased stress hormones, and reduced oxytocin levels. In children and adults alike, the absence of affectionate touch correlates with detachment, emotional numbness, and diminished trust. This is no small shift. We are, quite literally, rewriting the emotional circuitry of the human brain. Each missed hug, each unoffered hand, subtly weakens the ancient code our bodies use to say, "You matter, you belong, you are safe." The skin may register contact, but the message travels far deeper, and without it, something essential begins to fade, not just from our senses, but from our sense of self. The silent language of touch in a dimly lit lab. Under the hum of scanning machines, a subject lies still as emotional interactions unfold, not through speech, but through skin. Functional MRI images begin to bloom across a screen, revealing a quiet revelation. When a person receives a warm, intentional touch, a hand on the back, fingers gently entwined, the same regions of the brain light up as when they hear comforting words. The anterior cingulate cortex, involved in emotion regulation. The insula, a center of interoceptive awareness. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, linked to trust and empathy. In essence, the body hears what the voice might say. You're not alone. Further studies deepen the mystery. When romantic partners hold hands, their heart rates synchronize. Brainwave patterns begin to mirror each other. The mere act of touch becomes a kind of neural duet, aligning their internal rhythms. No speech, no explanation, just contact. And in moments of pain, even deep, inexpressible pain, touch can break through when language fails. In palliative care units, a hand held at the edge of life can soothe more than the most eloquent words. In PTSD therapy, gentle touch, when consented and carefully structured, can reduce flashbacks and stabilize emotional storms. This is not magic, it's biology. But it feels like magic because we've forgotten how powerful it is. And herein lies the dilemma. We are living through an age of touch withdrawal, not only driven by technology, but by a growing fear of crossing lines. In schools, teachers are warned to avoid all physical contact. In hospitals, clinicians juggle efficiency with liability, often minimizing touch to avoid misunderstanding. In parenting, even the well-intentioned become wary. Will I be judged, misinterpreted? And so, gradually, silently, one of humanity's most ancient tools for co-regulation is being engineered out of our lives. The fallout is visible. In classrooms, children with behavioral challenges may actually need more safe, structured touch, a pat on the shoulder, a grounding presence, yet receive none. In healthcare, patients complain of feeling like case numbers instead of human beings. In homes, screens glow while hugs grow scarce. And for those who live at the edges of this system, people with tactile processing disorders, or those with trauma-related touch aversion, the world can become even more alienating. For them, touch is not comfort, but confusion, not safety, but stimulus overload. These individuals remind us that touch is not universally healing. It must be contextual, consensual, and profoundly personal. This brings us to the ethical heart of the matter. How do we balance the undeniable power of touch with the need to protect personal boundaries, honor neurodiversity, and respect cultural norms? How do we avoid overstepping, while not retreating into emotional sterility? In trying to prevent harm, are we erasing one of our most basic forms of connection? The body speaks a silent language, ancient, intuitive, and often wiser than words. But are we still listening? The age of disconnection, too. We are living through a paradox of presence, hyperconnected by devices, yet physically and emotionally more distant than ever. In a world shaped by swipes, pings, and digital shorthand, touch, the most ancient form of human connection, is quietly disappearing. Emojis try to mimic what a hug once meant. Video calls simulate eye contact without the warmth of proximity. Workplaces grow increasingly cautious, with policies discouraging even the most benign gestures. No more handshakes, no reassuring pats on the back. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, new norms have emerged: elbow bumps instead of embraces, space maintained even in sorrow. But something vital has been lost in the name of safety, professionalism, and efficiency. At the molecular level, the absence of touch comes with invisible costs. Oxytocin, the so-called trust hormone, is released through affectionate contact, shared warmth, and genuine eye connection. It promotes bonding, reduces stress, and enhances empathy. But without physical closeness, its levels wane, and with them, our capacity for deep interpersonal trust. Neuroscience tells us that oxytocin modulates fear responses and fosters social connection, making us more cooperative, more generous, more attuned. Remove touch from the equation, and we begin to unravel one of our most basic biochemical foundations for feeling safe with one another. This erosion of touch becomes even more striking when viewed through history. In medieval times, healing was as much about presence as it was about prayer or poultices. The laying on of hands was seen as sacred. A healer's touch was an act of transference, of calm, of care, of spirit. Today, medicine has advanced in nearly every way but one. The human touch has receded. Doctors spend more time with screens than with patients' hands. Procedures improve, yet bedside connection diminishes. And in this sterile landscape, loneliness has crept in like a slow pandemic of its own, now classified as a public health crisis, with risks comparable to obesity, alcoholism, and smoking. But not all cultures have followed this path. In Latin America, friends walk arm in arm without self-consciousness. In South Asia, families sleep in the same room as a sign of closeness. In parts of Africa, greetings are incomplete without physical contact. By contrast, many Western societies have coded touch as suspicious, infantilizing, or inappropriate, especially in institutions. Cultural bias has turned something biologically vital into something legally risky, emotionally awkward, or socially suspect. This leads to a growing debate. Should we be training professionals, doctors, teachers, caregivers in the art of consensual, therapeutic touch? Some argue yes, pointing to programs where safe touch is reintroduced in schools with dramatic emotional benefits for children. Others raise alarms about boundaries and liability. Meanwhile, the market looks elsewhere. AI-driven massage bots are replacing human therapists. Social robots are now being developed with synthetic skin to mimic stroking. Yet no algorithm can truly replicate the nuance of a living hand. Can trust be engineered? Can comfort be coded? The emotional tension is rising. We are beginning to ask, can we outsource something so profoundly human, or ignore it without consequence? If we do, what becomes of us, not just as individuals, but as a species built on warmth, contact, and care? As we embrace the digital age, we may be sleepwalking into an age of disconnection, forgetting that touch is not a luxury, it is a language, and when we stop speaking it, we risk forgetting how to feel close at all. Trust without words, trust without words, long before we learn to speak, we learn to feel, not through logic or language, but through skin. Recent neuroscience reveals that touch is processed by the brain faster than speech, bypassing the rational cortex and going straight to the emotional centers tied to memory, safety, and trust. This discovery reframes everything. Touch is not an accessory to human connection, it is its origin. In trauma recovery, therapists witness something remarkable. Survivors who cannot verbalize their pain sometimes begin to heal not through talk, but through touch. A steady hand, a warm presence, a pressure that says, "You're safe now." The body, it seems, remembers comfort long before the mind can define it. But what happens when that memory is never formed? Studies of children raised without affectionate contact, in orphanages, institutions, or abusive homes, show deep, lasting scars, blunted empathy, stunted development, and impaired ability to trust. In solitary confinement, prisoners lose track not just of time, but of self. Deprived of touch, the social brain begins to unravel. Evolution tells us why. Mammals evolved touch as their first language, a glue for group cohesion, care, and cooperation. Human infants, helpless for years, depend on physical closeness to learn the rhythms of social life. The C-tactile nerve, fibers that carry gentle, effective touch, evolved alongside our capacity for emotional bonding. They are not optional. This is the twist. What we often treat as sentimental or soft is, in fact, structural. Touch is not decoration. It is a biological infrastructure for trust. And paradoxically, the very thing that makes us feel exposed, the vulnerability of being touched, is what makes us capable of deep connection. It is only by letting someone close enough to reach us through skin that we awaken the neural pathways for belonging. Trust, it turns out, does not begin in the mind. It begins in the body. Reclaiming the trust circuit in the quiet chambers of the brain, science has begun to map what ancient wisdom always intuited. Trust is not merely a belief, it is an embodied state. Effective touch, the gentle, intentional contact meant to soothe rather than stimulate, activates regions like the anterior insula and orbitofrontal cortex, areas responsible for emotional regulation, empathy, and social intuition. These aren't abstract processes, they are physical patterns laid down through experience. Infants who receive regular skin-to-skin contact, especially in the early formative days of life, grow into children with more resilient stress responses, better immune systems, and deeper capacity for connection. And the pattern doesn't stop with infancy. Couples who physically reconnect after conflict, through cuddling or simple sustained contact, show quicker physiological calming, faster repair of trust, and renewed emotional synchrony. Around the world, real change is happening. Therapy animals, once seen as emotional support props, are now recognized as living co-regulators of nervous systems, offering touch-based reassurance without judgment. Hospitals are designing programs around healing touch, encouraging caregiver closeness as a measurable tool for recovery. In communities fractured by isolation, dance, synchronized movement, and culturally rooted touch rituals are being reintroduced, not as entertainment, but as medicine. The lesson is clear. Trust can be rebuilt, even after trauma, disconnection, or distance. The nervous system retains its plasticity, its capacity to relearn how to feel safe in the presence of others. What's needed isn't more information, but deeper presence. In the end, healing doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from learning how to be with, to share space, warmth, and contact in a way that reactivates the ancient circuitry of connection. In reclaiming touch, we don't just restore intimacy, we rebuild the very foundation of trust, one living body at a time. The human hand, one hand, reaches for another, not to command, not to seduce, not even to heal, but simply to be with. In that gesture, so small it's often overlooked, something ancient stirs. Touch, at its core, is not about control, or therapy, or even comfort. It is about presence. A mutual, wordless agreement to exist alongside another. We spend our lives searching for the right words to explain, to reassure, to connect. But perhaps trust is not built in language at all. Perhaps it lives in the quiet moments when skin meets skin and says what words cannot. I see you, I feel you, I'm here. A child, half asleep, presses against a parent's chest. An elderly hand reaches out in weakness and finds another waiting. After disaster, strangers who share nothing else fold into each other's arms and find something like peace. These are not grand gestures, they are deeply human ones. And maybe, in every touch, freely given and received, a question is being asked, are you here with me? And maybe, when that question is met with stillness, with warmth, with presence, the answer becomes yes, not spoken, but felt, and that is where trust is born.